Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, Salãmun Alaykum, everyone. Welcome to the Quran study for June 20th. And we get together as a worship practice. We are instructed in 73:4 to read the Quran from cover to cover, and we are also instructed to force ourselves to be with the believers. Well, we're with each other in a virtual way. God willing, we'll get credit for that. And the wonderful thing about worship, in the last verse of Surah 15, for 1599, and worship your Lord in order to attain certainty. So, God willing, with this worship, we increase our inner certainty. And the good thing about it is that our soul will grow with our worship practices, and God willing, we'll be able to withstand God's presence if we make it to heaven, God willing. Okay, so I'm starting at 8:35. We'll see how far I go. First, I'll say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected, and in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. So the subtitle here says, the contact prayers, Salat, existed before the Quran. So here's 8:35. Their contact prayers, Salat, at the shrine, the Kaaba, were no more than a mockery and a means of repelling the people by crowding them out. Therefore, suffer the retribution for your disbelief. So there's a lot of context in there. Who's there? Contact prayers. That's let's go to 8:34 on that one. And 8:34. Well, it's a little bit before. 8:31 says, when our revolution are cited to them. Let's see. Let's go to 8:30. The disbelievers plot and scheme to neutralize you. 8:31 saying, talking about when the revelations are recited to them, and also they also said, God, our God, if this is really the truth from you, then shower us with rocks from the sky. And that was the really strange thing that people who are challenging God says. So we're continually talking about the disbelievers. And so you get down to 8:35, and it's their contact prayers. So these are disbelievers doing contact prayers. That right there lets you know that the disbelievers were at the Kaaba doing contact prayers. So it's impossible. How could it be that Muhammad brought the contact prayers in? It's just not possible when you look at the context of this verse alone. However, there's many other verses. So the footnote of 8:34 says, all religious practices in Islam came to us through Abraham when the Quran was revealed. All religious practices in Islam came to us through Abraham. When the Quran was revealed, all rights and submission were already in existence. Okay, so that's a big thing to chew on right there, that all our religious practices in Islam existed before the Quran ever came to Muhammad. And how do we know that? How can we, and what in the Quran is telling us that? We just saw from that verse that, these people were doing Salat. The disbelievers were doing Salat. There's a big clue for you right there. Well, I'm going to take you to 46:4. It's a verse that talks about some established knowledge. Just listen to how this plays out. Say, consider the idols you have set up beside God. Show me what on earth did they create. Do they own part of the heavens? Show me any other scripture before this one, or any piece of established knowledge that supports your idolatry, if you are truthful. It's interesting that God is mentioning, he's challenging people to show me some established knowledge that supports what they're saying. So he's saying, show me a scripture or show me established knowledge. I thought that was interesting because it places established knowledge as a thing, as something to consider when you're reading Quran. See, we read the Quran and we need to change our understanding so that it fits what is mentioned in the Quran. It has to be that way. It has to be mentioned. It's in some way. Now, some people demand that every single tiny detail is mentioned. And the question is that what God is demanding of us? And well, in the case of Abraham, he received all the religious practices, and we learn that in 21:72. It says, and we granted him Isaac and Jacob as a gift, and we made them both righteous. We made them imams who guided in accordance with our commandments, and we taught them how to work righteousness and how to observe the contact prayers and the obligatory charity, zakat. So there you have it. All three of them, actually with Jacob as well, were taught contact prayers and zakat. At least that. Says footnote says in 21:73, when the Quran was revealed, all religious duties were already established through Abraham. So who did God make imams? It said Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham. Well, what about Ishmael? Well, in 2:127, Abraham raised the foundation of the shrine together with Ishmael, and they prayed, "Our Lord, accept this from us. You are here omniscient." 2:128. Our Lord, make us submitters to you, and from our descendants, let there be a community of submitters to you. So therefore, you can see that Ishmael also was of the submitters. In fact, as the Kaaba was being raised with Abraham, they were praying this together. It seems that Ishmael would therefore be along with Abraham the second, or very close. And maybe it was Abraham's wife. I'm not sure, but Ishmael's right there. And it says later that in another verse that Ishmael was a messenger prophet. So why am I talking about this? Well, I'm talking about how the religious practices were given at the time of Abraham. And who was alive with him? Well, there was Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob. Well, Isaac and Jacob, that's the Jews and the Christians. That's that lineage that goes down through Joseph and the patriarchs and Moses and David and Jesus, that whole lineage that way. But what happened? What about on the Ishmael side? What happened there? So you can see that Ishmael, he was there with the Kaaba. So clearly he was one of the custodians there of the Kaaba. And he was one of the, and it says here in 1959, 1954, and mentioned in the scripture Ishmael. He was truthful when he made a promise, and he was a messenger prophet. He used to enjoin his family to observe the contact prayers, salat, and the obligatory charity, zakat. So there you have it. So we have Ishmael was imploring his family. He was enjoining his family to do the worship practices, the contact prayers, and the so that is Mecca. That's where he was at. He was in Mecca. His family was in Mecca. And so it's very strong evidence, well, there's, when it comes to the time of Muhammad, he was told to follow the religion of Abraham, the Milat Ibrahim. And so it's very, it wouldn't be that far reaching to think that the custodians, the Quraysh, the custodians of the Kaaba, the descendants of Ishmael, that they would still have remnants or all of the practices of Abraham. Well, we find out the Quran that when Muhammad comes, that he's told him to just follow the religion of Abraham. So we're not even concerned about what happens on the Christian side or the Jewish side, because there's direct lineage through Ishmael and the Quraysh living in Mecca. So here's another one. Let's see, 2278. You shall strive for the cause of God as you should strive for his cause. He has chosen you, and he has placed no hardship on you in practicing your religion, the religion of your father Abraham. He's the one who named you submitters originally. Thus, the messengers shall serve as witnesses among you, and you shall serve as witnesses among the people. Therefore, you shall observe the contact prayers, obligatory charity, and hold fast to God. He is your Lord, the best Lord, and the best supporter. So they're in there. Messengers serve you, and you serve as witness among the people. That's the process. A messenger comes. What's the message? And then the people take the message and they pass it on, pass down. They serve as witnesses among the people. And that's the process right there. So the footnote for 2278 says, although all messengers preach one and the same message, worship God alone, Abraham was the first messenger to coin the term submission and submitter. What did Abraham contribute to submission? We learn from 16:123 that all religious duties and submission were revealed through Abraham. Okay. So clearly we've had the religion was passed down. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what was the religion? What were these practices? How's an outsider going to know what they were? And that goes to the back of the Quran's being that it's fully detailed and that it's complete. You're going to find things mentioned in the Quran. They're going to be specified. Let me read this in Appendix 9 from Abraham, because what I'm talking about is I'm making a case. I'm saying that, okay, our religious practices already existed when Muhammad came. And that means that the Quraysh were already doing salat, and they already had the amount of the rakahs, how many prostrations to do, all of the details of it they had. Appendix 9 says, one of the prevalent myths is that Muhammad was the founder of Islam. Although Islam, total submission to God alone, is the only religion recognized by God since the time of Adam. Abraham is reported in the Quran as the first user of the word Islam and the one who called us Muslims. So he's the first one who called us Muslims. Islam is called Milat Ibrahim throughout the Quran. Moreover, the Quran informs us that Muhammad was a follower of Abraham. So how he's a follower? God told him, follow Abraham. He's going to have to ask himself, well, what's that? Well, it obviously, what was the very first thing I talked about today? Established knowledge. That it was established knowledge in the Quran. So I want to reiterate something, that he was a follower of Abraham, and our understanding must mold to how the Quran states these facts. Notice how this was applied by the messenger of the covenant. The messenger of the covenant, he's saying, okay, wait, it was already there. The information was already there. So you can see what he said is, well, then if the message, the practice must have been already intact. And you can see the thought process went like this. Muhammad was enjoined to follow the religion of Abraham. If I ask you to buy a color TV, it is assumed that you know what a color TV is. Similarly, when God enjoined Muhammad to follow the practices of Abraham, such practices must have been well known. So you see, it's God states it, follow the religion of Abraham, and there's these clues that they were following it anyway. They are doing salat, and so therefore you're seeing, this must be established knowledge already. Now, the other thing that the messenger said, okay, well, that's interesting. It's established knowledge, but is it preserved? Was it intact? Well, he's got here another proof of design preservation of the Islamic practices given to Abraham is the universal acceptance of such practices. So perhaps at the time, obviously at the time of Muhammad, it was universally accepted too, but even at the time of when Dr. Khalifa was looking at the practices and how they've gotten distorted over time, he was looking at it and he was able to notice that, well, all the schools of thought agreed on the basic principles of the salat, and they agreed on the 2.5% zakat. That the fact that they all agreed that was further proof of universal acceptance. Now, it's interesting because that's how we know our practices are passed down, and they're mentioned in the Quran. Like mentioned the Quran, salat mentioned the Quran. Could somebody turn their mic off? Somebody's got their mic on. Thank you. Salat. Let's see. Oh yeah, fasting, salat, Hajj, and I'm missing one.
Salat, zakat, fasting, and Hajj.
Yeah, salat, fasting, and Hajj. Yeah, could you turn your mic? I hear everything in the background. I'm sorry. It's just I'm losing my train of thought. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Yep, salat, fasting, zakat, and Hajj. That was it. Okay, so they were already established. Well, recently we've run into an issue where people are looking at Appendix 9, and it's been distorted. And which one is distorted? What part of Appendix 9 is distorted? Well, I'm going to read it right here. It says, the Quran deals only with practices that were distorted. For example, the distorted ablution is restored in 5:6 to its original 4 steps. The tone of voice during the conduct prayers was distorted, and many Muslims pray silently. This was corrected in the Quran. Okay, so the Quran deals only with practices that were distorted. That's the statement that's been abused. The Quran deals only with, is distorted to imply the Quran mentions only. So rather than the Quran dealing with, meaning it corrects, it's handling these distortions. Rather than understanding it like this, there's this understanding that the Quran mentions only practices that needed to be fixed. So that opens this door to all of these unmentioned practices that could be out there that are perfectly intact, that that we need to add to our religion. But even the context, when you read it, the Quran deals only with practices that were distorted. I mean, it deals with means it's not, the focus isn't deals only with, it's deals only with is saying he's going to straighten out the ones that are messed up. That's the understanding that I feel is completely clear here. So anyway, they make the statement seem like the Quran only has the purpose of correcting distortions in existing practices. They imply that undistorted practices will not be mentioned, which is completely wrong. So anyway, this whole thing I'm trying to establish here is that the practices, everything came down from Abraham and through Ishmael, and intact through Ishmael. And it's interesting, and Isaac as well too, but we know the Quran tells us that that the descendants of Israel, that they prayers. That's in 1959. After them, he substituted generations who lost the contact prayers. Now it's interesting. It doesn't say they lost the zakat, but obviously the correct zakat got distorted on that side because it went to the word tithing, which is 10%. So that's the way I see that, is that it didn't get lost, but it did lose its original understanding. But it's interesting that the three messengers of Islam are Abraham, Muhammad, and Rashad Khalifa. However, you can also include mathematically the geometric value of Isaac and Ishmael, and that is also true. That is also a multiple of 19 as well. So the original messengers you could see as Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael, and then you had Muhammad with the Quran, and then you have the consolidating messenger with Rashad Khalifa. So I hope that wasn't too convoluted. I'm just to reiterate, their contact prayers at the shrine were no more than a mockery and a means of repelling the people by crowding them out. Therefore, suffer the retribution for your disbelief. That's basically saying that what's understood there is all practice in Islam came to us through Abraham. When the Quran was revealed, all rights and submission were already in existence, and that's proof that they were in existence. And then I just felt the need to go through the lineage of how they could possibly be in existence, and inshallah, that wasn't too much. Okay, let me go to 836. Spending their money to fight God. Those who did spend their money to repel others, they will spend it, then it will turn into sorrow and remorse for them. Ultimately, they will be defeated, and all disbelievers will be summoned to hell. So the footnote says, the idol-worshipping leaders of corrupted Islam, Saudi Arabia, have allocated huge sums of money annually to fight God and his miracle. For example, the famous Lebanese publisher, Knowledge for the Millions, published the Arabic version of the Miracle of the Quran in March of 1983, and the Saudis bought all the copies and destroyed them. Well, we see also somebody's putting a lot of effort in the Quran in the internet to flood it with a bunch of different miracles of like math miracles that don't remove the two false verses, and they also use numbers not specified in the Quran. So like math miracles using the number 7, but the thing that makes the math miracle so unique, one of the powerful components is that God is the one who mentions the number 19. It's not like we just discovered, oh wow, 19 is somehow connected here. No, God's the one saying that it's going to be used to prove to the Jews, the Christians, that verse. God willing. Okay. 837. God will sift away the bad from the good, then pile the bad on top of each other, all in one pile, then throw it into hell. Such are the losers. So that statement, God will sift the bad from the good, then pile the bad on top of each other, all on top of each other, all in one pile, then throw them in hell. Such are the losers. It feels like that statement means God's going to throw people in hell. Well, we understand from so many other verses that God does not do anything but good. He does all good. That he doesn't do one thing that is bad. People do it to themselves. So yet, because again, it's the Quran, the whole Quran, and nothing but the Quran, but the whole Quran. It has to be taken in context with other verses. And even though it says God will pile them all up and throw them in hell, it has to be understood some mechanism such that God will not be doing anything bad to people. And again, that's another way. I think it's just another example for us of how the mind has to come up with explanations of the Quran that fit the other verses in the Quran. You can't just take isolated statements and not have them be measured against other statements to put them into context. Okay, 838. Tell those who disbelieved, if they stop, all their past sins will be forgiven. Wait, excuse me. Tell those who disbelieved, if they stopped, all their past will be forgiven. But if they return, they will incur the same fate as their counterparts. Wow. So, there's people repelling. We're talking about people using their money to fight God's message. But God's just saying, well, if you stop, and repent, we just can strike this off the record. It can be forgiven. And I thought, wow, how merciful, just to stop your actions. And God says he can forgive it. So 839, you shall fight them to ward off oppression and to practice your religion devoted to God alone. If they refrain from aggression, then God is fully seer of everything they do. So, fight them to ward off oppression. Okay. Again, I really believe we have to understand the whole Quran to understand the context of these things too. So I looked at and I think, well, am I oppressed? To fight them to ward off oppression. Am I oppressed? Can I worship God alone in peace? Am I being forced to physically removed from my place? Can I, at some point, where does that begin? That's a good discussion to have. Well, where does oppression begin? When do you say, okay, yeah, that is oppression, and what is aggression, and what is it that they're doing as aggression? I mean, if somebody's making fun of me, if they're spamming me, doing all kinds of things, leaving bad notes on my door, all that stuff, is that aggression? Is that oppression? I don't know. Yeah, it could be, or it could just simply be people who are annoying, and that may fall under the category of disregard their behavior. I mean, if you can still physically worship God, and that you have your home, that kind of thing. I don't know. I think you have to take it in that kind of context. But okay, 840. If they turn away, then you should know that God is your Lord and Master, the best Lord and Master, the best supporter. You should know that if you gain any spoils in war, 1/5 go to God and the messenger, to be given to the relatives, the orphans, the poor, and the traveling alien. You will do this if you believe in God and in what we revealed to our servant on the day of decision, the day the two armies clashed. God is omnipotent. So obviously, spoils of war. I was listening on one of the audio tapes. The messenger mentioned that probably isn't going to happen to us, but dealing with spoils of war. But clearly, you can see how it's directed to be part of charity, and where charity is so important for us that God will withhold his mercy for those who give charity. So God controls everything and plans for the believer. 842. Recall that you were on the side of the valley while they were on the other side. Then their caravan had to move to lower ground. Had you planned it this way, you could not have done it. But God was to carry out a predetermined matter whereby those destined to be annihilated were annihilated for an obvious reason, and those destined to be saved were saved for an obvious reason. God is here, omniscient. God made them appear in your dream, O Muhammad, fewer in number. Had he made them appear more numerous, you would have failed, and you would have disputed among yourselves. But God saved the situation. He is knower of the innermost thoughts. So, I guess what this is saying is that you could, if you wanted to design the battle plan to set up in your favor so well, there's no way you could have done it. It's God who controls the hearts and minds of people, and he set the battlefield up in such a way that it would be advantageous to the side that God wanted it to be. Also, we've had previous discussions about the importance of dreams, and the messenger had pointed out that, you don't need to focus on your dreams, that God will let you know one way or another. But clearly, here in this verse, God did use Muhammad's dream to build his confidence because he made them appear. So in the dream, sleeping easy, saying, "Oh, we can handle this," something like that. So it's interesting how, we may not need to focus on dreams, but it doesn't mean that God, he controls the minds, that he may be soothing you through that way as well. 844. And when the time came and you faced them, he made them appear fewer in your eyes and made you appear fewer in their eyes as well. For God willed to carry out a certain plan. All decisions are made by God. There you go. God is controlling everything. All the hearts and minds are controlled by God. And we don't even see reality. It's like that's what that's saying there. Everything appeared fewer in their eyes and fewer in our eyes. In the Muslims, the Muslims fighting with Muhammad's eyes. So both sides are not seeing what's actually there. What's kind of interesting to me. How often is that the case? So 845. Oh, you who believe, when you encounter an army, you shall hold fast and commemorate God frequently, that you may succeed. Inshallah, we don't encounter an army. Let's see. You shall obey God and his messenger, and do not dispute among yourselves, lest you fail and scatter your strength. You shall steadfastly persevere. God is with those who steadfastly persevere. Well, this is obviously true when you're on the battlefield. It's just a gross example of it, that if you're on the battlefield and you don't have a direct lineage of command and you don't follow protocol, there's going to be chaos and you'll get nowhere. And I think that we could take advice from this as well, about having systems of we do debate things. We are in the process of having understandings and persuading each other of them. And I guess it's best for us to take heed and put it in its perspective, in a perspective such that we don't cause dispute and division among ourselves. We don't want to, we don't want to not be unified to some degree. This could get into the unity issue, but do not dispute among yourselves. This was in the war, of course, but it probably goes into some degree in other areas. Okay, so let's see. Do not be like those who left their homes grudgingly, only to show off and in fact discouraged others from following the path of God. God is fully aware of everything they do. So there's people, they're just showing off by being part of the battle, and also, Debbie Downer. They're basically letting people feel, I don't know, we're not going to make it, this kind of thing, putting doubt in people's hearts. Also, let's go to 848. The devil sees God's invisible soldiers. 8, look, interested me because I want us to focus on, look what the devil can do, and also whose eyes is he influencing here? So 847 was talking kind of about hypocrites that are amongst the people. And it says 848, the devil had adorned their works in their eyes and said, you cannot be defeated by any people today, and I will be fighting along with you. Yeah, so that's really interesting. I mean, you don't think, there's no way you're a believer, or even if you're the disbeliever, you're not like happy, wow, we've got the devil working on our side. The devil is somehow boosting their confidence. He's saying he'll be on their side, but there's no way that the people are thinking, well, I've got the devil on my side, so I'm really happy. It's just interesting there that he's working on the doubts of people, and also on the false confidences of people, kind of like maybe liquid courage with the drinkers, people like that. But let me read the rest of it. But as soon as the two armies faced each other, he turned back on his heels and fled, saying, I disown you. I see what you do not see. I am afraid of God. God's retribution is awesome. So it was all a lie. They lost their courage and lost hope and questioned the whole cause. And it's because Satan boosted their confidence and then dropped it in the heat of the battle. Okay, 849. The hypocrites and those who harbor doubts in their hearts said, these people are deceived by their religion. However, if one puts his trust in God, then God is almighty, most wise. So look at that. Hypocrites faced in the heat of the battle, and they look at the rest of the believers and they're deceived by their religion. They're told they don't even believe it at that point. It's like these people are believing in something unreal. I mean, they're lost. Basically, the hypocrites think the believers are lost at that point. Okay. It's getting real close here. Should I keep going, or what do you guys want me to do?
You can read them till the verse you said you were going to read up till.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, 850. If you could only see those who disbelieved when the angels put them to death, they will beat them on their faces and their rear ends. Taste the retribution of hell. So that's about disbelievers and the time of death. And that there you have it. At the moment of death for the righteous, those very few that end up being righteous, God just takes them, and maybe I shouldn't say it like that. Maybe all those who are under 40 as well. We don't know how the actual death process. It can't be this. It wouldn't be that they're getting slapped on the face and stuff. So it may be a lot more of a comfort. They may be taken out of their bodies before the horrible event happens, or the worst what you can imagine. But I'll just stick with this verse to say that if you're a disbeliever, if you're God knows which ones it's going to be disbelievers. At the death of that disbeliever, the retribution, even though the retribution starts in this life, the process of leaving the body, you can see, is quite a miserable one. Uh, 851. This is a consequence of what your hands have sent forth. God is never unjust towards the creatures, so it's our own fault. We bring it on ourselves. 852. This is the same fate as that of Pharaoh's people and those who disbelieved before them. They rejected God's revelations, and God punished them for their sins. God is powerful, and his retribution is severe. Yeah, you just can't add much to that. There's so much. God has over and over again in the Quran warned us about how horrible hell is. I mean, if you look at the concept of a carrot and the stick, that we're either being led to do righteousness or that we're afraid of being hit by the stick to go towards it. We got both. And the stick here, God is reminding us that, look, if you can't be led to righteousness by the appeal of good, please consider how bad it's going to be if you don't change. So I think we need both the carrot and the stick. Okay, retribution, a consequence of sin. 853. God does not change a blessing he has bestowed upon any people unless they themselves decide to change. God is here omniscient. So listen. So we're all in a situation in our life, and it's interesting because even the disbelievers are blessed. Look at all the provisions they got. They got their body in advance. They got all these provisions. Many of them are super wealthy, doing all this stuff. Look what they get. God gave them blessings, but God is the one who changes the blessings. God's the one who changes it. And how does that happen? We only do one thing. We choose to submit to God, or we don't. If we submit, he changes our blessing. He gives us guidance, or whatever he gives us. The ultimate blessing, as I can see it, is guidance. That's what I think anyway. Such was the case with the people of Pharaoh and others before them. They rejected the signs of their Lord. Consequently, we annihilated them for their sins, and we drowned Pharaoh's people. The wicked were consistently punished. The worst creatures in the sight of God are those who disbelieved. They cannot believe. So, we look at how people look down on pigs and monkeys, or, roaches, all these, viruses. Look at people, Ebola virus. Not the worst creatures. The worst creatures in the sight of God are those who disbelieved. And it's interesting because they cannot believe. The stamp is on their forehead. And that's, if you go to Surah 40, verse 6, thus the judgment of your Lord is already stamped upon those who disbelieve, that they are dwellers of hell. Also in 46:16. It is from these that we accept the righteous works and overlook their sins. They have deserved paradise. This is the truthful promise that is promised to them. 46:17. Then there is the one who says to his parents, woe to you. Are you telling me that after death I will come back to life? How come those who died before us never come back? The parents would cry for God's help and say, woe to you. Please believe. God's promise is the truth. He would say, tales from the past. 46:18. Such are the ones stamped as disbelievers among every generation of jinns and humans. They are the losers. So I'm tying this in with 855. They cannot believe. They cannot believe because they're stamped as disbelievers. God already knows that nothing's going to get through to them. They're stamped already. Their fate is known. This deals with Appendix 14, which is about the idea of our lives. Is their destiny or not? Is their predestination or not? And Appendix 14 talks about that. As far as God is concerned, He knows everything. We don't know, but God knows where everyone's going already. That time isn't even a thing for God. Time is for his creatures. The past has already happened as far as God is concerned. Okay, so 856. You reach agreements with them, but they violate their agreements every time. They are not righteous. Therefore, if you counter them in war, you shall set them up as a deterrent example for those who come after them, that they may take heed. And when they are betrayed by a group of people, when you are betrayed by a group of people, you shall mobilize against them in the same manner. God does not love the betrayers. 859. Let not those who disbelieve think they can get away with it. They can never escape. So, wow, this is in war that when you encounter them in war, these people are fighting God and they're killing you and they're pushing you out of your home. This situation happened, and God did not take lightly to that. He set them up as examples, and when people were betraying them, they betrayed them in the same. They came at them in the same manner. And I'll end it with that. God willing, everyone can correct the understandings that were erroneous that I had. God willing, maybe they were right too. Inshallah. Salãmun Alaykum.
Salãmun Alaykum. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. Great study.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That was great. I had a question, Jeff. So I know you talk about religion of Abraham and how we got the practices from Abraham. So I guess there's a question like, how do you know about certain details? For example, that people read the Quran and they sort of draw their own conclusions as to like how they can do their salat, for example, or how they can observe their fasting and things that they don't find in the Quran, but things that we don't see being practiced right now. So how do you distinguish, for example, that let's say like things that you can do during your prayer, or things that you shouldn't do while you're fasting, or things that you shouldn't do while you're doing your salat? Obviously, you won't find it in the Quran if it's not being done or anything like that during the time of revelations. How would you go about determining what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do during these practices?
Exactly. Well, yeah. So here's all this information about how much information there is in the Quran. So I was just going on and on about how our practices existed. Well, I was a Sunni Muslim and I didn't know any of this stuff. I was Shia a little bit as well. Didn't know this stuff. It took for me a messenger came from God. He showed proof, and he clarified it. And while he was clarifying it, he showed how he came to these understandings. He said, wait, because it's our obligation to say, well, if it's not in the Quran, why are you saying it? Even to a messenger. But the messenger, he provided all the rationale. He showed how this is in the Quran. through this established knowledge. He pointed out that where the established knowledge was already there. And for me, I am my guidance and confidence came because a messenger came with the proof that he's a messenger, and he's the one who clarified it for me, and I trust him. I only go and I see what his process was, and I can follow it in retrospect.
So what my question is exactly, what is that process?
You mean
what was his process?
Oh,
just determining what we can do and what you cannot do.
Oh, exactly. Well, first of all, it has to be, the Quran is complete and fully detailed. That is the main thing. The Quran is complete and fully detailed. So therefore, however you understand your rights and your practices, you have to know somehow it's already in the Quran. It's there. It's mentioned. These things are mentioned. So, for example, you go to the word salat. It's in the Quran all over the place. You go to the word fasting. It's all over the Quran. Zakat, just as much, all over, even more. And the Hajj, we know the whole process of how Hajj came there. And we know little things like funeral prayer. There'll be something mentioned about that. You know about Jummah prayer. It's mentioned. We know about ablution. It's all completely spelled out for it. That's a worship practice. There's dhikr, all kinds of dhikr, that ways to do dhikr. The Masha Allah, the mention God's name before you eat, God willing, inshallah. All these things, they're all mentioned. Everything's in there. It's fully detailed. This is a scripture that was that superseded all previous scriptures, and therefore we can find these elements mentioned in there. And if they don't need to be thoroughly explained, it's because the established knowledge is already there, but they're at least mentioned. That's how I understand it.
Right. I mean, let me give you an example. Let's say someone says that, there's no place in the Quran where it says that women can't lead prayers for other men, for example. Like, imagine the messenger of the covenant didn't explain it. Maybe that's like a more obvious one. But, or, someone says, well, Quran doesn't say that, you have to take off your shoes during your salat. Or somebody says that, how would these kind of questions people come up with, right? So what should be your line of reasoning to determine whether like these types of questions specifically that are not being practiced?
Well,
I hope I'm being repetitive.
No. This is good. And I may not come to the answer you want, but I will say this, that underlying everything to start out with is innovations are a big problem. That if you innovate, that's the Quran mentions that quite many times, several times at least, about how the innovations cause people their doom. And so there you have, first of all, you're going to be checked on what you don't want to create or insert a new practice because you'll be innovating. So I think it's very important to know that Islam is a religion that came, and it has been intact, but there's been many insertions to it. But the messenger, he corrected the thing. The messenger used the message, which is the Quran, to basically trim the fat from it. That, for example, La ilaha illallah, that means you cannot have all of these other verses talked about in the, I mean, when you're mentioning, when you're doing your salat, because sometimes it mentions Muhammad or sometimes it mentions Moses, these kinds of understandings, because you take the whole Quran, you understand it. That, I think that's, I don't know, you're probably leading towards another answer. Why don't
No,
you
no,
say it?
I think you answered it well. Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, I
inshallah.
mean, I think it's the idea that to understand that you know, things that we are practiced are give things we do this a lot the way we do, and we do the zakat the way we do because that's how it was passed down to us from generation to generation. And the messenger of the covenant has purified and clarified the parts that were wrong as proven from the Quran. And so, like, if you want to do it differently, you know, whether it's your fasting or your salat or anything else, like, you know, that's shouldn't come into question because we know that it's done a certain way, and you cannot be creative about it. If you try to practice, you know, try to come up with new possibilities, um, you know, that and your line of reasoning is just saying that it's not in the Quran. That's obviously setting yourself up for failure because the religious practices were given to Abraham. So the practices are mentioned in the Quran, but their details are not mentioned. So if you're looking into the Quran for their details, and if you don't find a certain condition being covered and you go and try to do that, then you're really setting yourself up for failure and you're misunderstanding what it means that the Quran is fully detailed. So the details of the actual practices themselves are not going to be found in the Quran. So, like, for example, you know, someone came up with the idea that if you lose your ablution, like, you don't have to you know, do it again if you're praying. And where does God say in the Quran that, you know, it's this and that, and, you know, you're making things up and all that kind of stuff? Well, obviously, there it's an established practice that if you lose your ablution, you go and you do your ablution again, and you do your prayer, and that's how we have received the practice. And so this is just an example, right? That's
Yeah.
how we've received the practice. That's how it's been practiced from generation to generation. But if you're going to try to innovate new ideas around it with your personal opinion and then look for the Quran for details, you're not going to find them. And then you're going to go astray, not knowing that you're creating an innovation and changing the practice and the rights. You know, it's a specific thing that's handed down to us, very exact and very specific. And we need to make sure that we follow it to the T and not be creative around it. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well put. It's like this, it's this balance between established knowledge and the Quran that is telling us the details, and but we do have established knowledge, and then and also with the fear of innovating. You know, wait, don't innovate. Look, you have to constrain yourself, and that's what we see with all these Quran alone people. They have no constraints this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're prime examples of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
change the words and everything. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think they have an advanced religion. They have 0 prayer, 3 prayer, 4 prayer. Like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think also the other verse you read, I think it was a good example about fighting. You know, because I know you touched on the types of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so the verse 36 is actually, I think, a very good verse because it says spending their money to fight God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the verse, it says those who disbelieve spend their money to repel others from the way of God. So they're not actually physically fighting in any way, or even like in a like a physical manner. They're not attacking you. They're not being aggressive. You know, nothing like that. But you know, they're just spending money and using their minds. You know, they're coming up with schemes and ways and tricks to defeat you and combat you, basically. And the subtitle says they're spending their money to fight God, because really what they're doing, they're fighting the message. So fighting the message, when people fight God and his messenger, they're really fighting the message. They're not literally physically fighting with him. I mean, they could be fighting with the messenger and fighting with the believers, but if that's the only possibility, then we can conclude that we no longer have to ever fight in the cause of God, like as in, striving in any shape or form against these people that, but I don't see that here, because also if you look at the example here, it says, I mean, the footnote is very clear. And I mean, and I'm not getting into like subtle details of like our situation and whatnot, but I'm just saying that my point is that for this is a good example of fighting, and so if you see, it says the idol worshipping leaders of corrupted Islam, Saudi Arabia, have allocated huge sums of money annually to fight God and his miracle. For example, the famous Lebanese publisher Darul Ilm Lil Malayan, Knowledge for the Millions, published the Arabic version of the Miracle of the Quran in March 1983. The Saudis bought all the copies and destroyed them. So they didn't aggress upon any person. They actually helped them by buying all their copies in a way, but they destroyed them. And so it was a tactic that they used to fight without, getting into a physical battle. But it's still mentioned as a fight. So the point here is that, for people to fight God, they don't physically come and attack you or anything like that. They can have a strategy and some sort of schemes that they can do, and as long as they're working towards their main goal, which is to defeat the message, that's what they're doing. They're fighting. So just wanted to share that, because I know we did touch upon it earlier in the study, and previously we had discussions about it, but I think it just, the verse is super clear.
Can I say
And
something?
censorship also.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I shirked my moderator responsibility. Yeah, go ahead, Nudrat.
Yeah, Assalamu Alaikum.
Salāmun
Yeah,
Alaykum.
basically, fighting obviously is just not always physical. That is a common understanding, Masha Allah. We should have no doubt about that. Like, we fight against our own, weaknesses, or so anything which is actively going against God, or repelling people from the path of God or the true path, is actively fighting against God, right? And or fighting God. So yeah, this is a good example of that spending, like these Saudis never themselves go into the war, but they fund all kinds of bad people, and they think they are actually doing a good job, because sometimes they fund these really bad organizations, some terrorist organizations, they think because they cannot physically go and do jihad, so-called jihad, but they justify it. They think they're fighting, in the cause of God. Basically, they're actually repelling people from path of God, and they don't even move from their palaces and whatnot. But yeah, any resistance which goes against, the word of God or the truth is basically fighting it. That's about it.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff, everything. And what I see, what the messenger did in response was he exposes what they did. He exposes them. He shows what they do and how corrupt they are. And that's his response to that mode of fighting. I don't know what he may have done other than that. Let's see, it was in 83. I don't know. Perhaps there was other articles directed against them, condemning them. I don't know, but nobody's going to remember that they did that. What most people are going to remember is this footnote right here. It's going to probably live much longer, and so he'll have had the final say on that one.
Can I say something, please? Salaamu Alaykum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. About verse 53, that it's subhanallah, such a beautiful information God is giving us, that for our own good, that God does not change a blessing he has bestowed upon any people unless they themselves decide to change. God is hearer, omniscient. Such was the case with the people of Pharaoh and others before them. They first rejected the signs of their Lord. Consequently, we annihilated them for their sins. We drowned Pharaoh's people. The wicked were consistently punished. So this is God's system. God is telling us that first of all, like Jeff was explaining, Masha Allah, beautifully, that God has blessed all the human race with so much, even the disbelievers, wonderful, beautiful bodies and all the provisions and all the material of this world and all the blessings God has given. We even cannot encompass them, like the air, the sun, the moon, the stars, the day and night, and trees, so much blessing, purification, uncountable blessings. And then the decision, what human being we decide either God, to be appreciative, to his absolute authority, or the other way, we just don't care and we just without, because no person will say, no human being will say that, oh, okay, I am choosing Satan. No, nobody thinks like that. But when they don't choose God's absolute authority and the other way around, then automatically it comes to choose a Satan, to follow Satan. So when that is the reason that when the human beings decide themselves to change the blessings bestowed upon them by God Almighty. So here, this God is giving us the example in 54 verse, that such was the case with the people of Pharaoh. God blessed them with beautiful, so much material, so much blessings. And then God sent them the messenger, prophet, and a message. But what they decided not to accept it, to reject it. So when they reject, so after that, God saying, the consequently we annihilated them for their sins. So this is then when human beings, God is so merciful that he has given everyone a lifelong span to think, to make a decision. The 40 years, even the age before the age of 40, if he dies even as a disbeliever, God is so merciful that he gives them the paradise. He saves them from hell. And still, the people who deserve to stay longer cross the age of 40. For that is for them, then that this is really their decisions, either take them to the retribution or to take them to the paradise in God's blessings. So this is the decisions, the main thing human beings makes. And after that, After that, God takes over whatever the human being deserves. This is it. This is just wanting to share with.
Yeah, Masha Allah.
Thank you.
What do you guys think about the verse 56 and like 57, but maybe like more like 56 and 58? Well, just 58 actually. Never mind. It says, when you're betrayed by a group of people, you shall mobilize against them in the same manner. God does not love the betrayers.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna be a party pooper. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Just kidding. In the previous verse, it's talking about the disbelievers when we encounter them in war, that we shall set them up as deterrent example. It works on the fear of the disbelievers, so they don't act all arrogant and attack people. Anyways, and then 58, it's not talking about the disbelievers anymore. It's talking about any group. Right?
Mhm.
This is an example concerning any group of people. When you are betrayed by a group of people, you shall mobilize against them in the same manner. God does not love the betrayers. And you mobilize against them in the same manner as in the previous verse. You set them up as a deterrent example to scare people.
Oh.
You make an example of them. That's my impression. That's my understanding.
So I looked at it in the past. I looked at it as it saying that when you're betrayed by them, you mobilize against them in the same manner as they betrayed you and they mobilized against you. But I think what you said is a little bit different in the sense that you're saying that in the same manner as in what the previous verse is saying. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's how I understood it, because that covers everything.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in the context of war still. I don't see how it because 59 and 60 go right. It's still talking about war because I don't know. I mean you mobilize against them. That has a physical nature to it, and betrayed by a group. I mean, you can be betrayed, and it can still just be an insult. I don't know. I don't see it directly separated from war, but I may be wrong.
Right, but what do you think about being in the same manner part? What do you think about that? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, like for example, if they're betrayed, like for example, if they interrupted the caravan, then when the caravans are coming from the north, they would be able to go and get some of their goods back. Betrayed, or betrayed. Betrayal would be like a truce. Look, we let the caravans go through, but then they betrayed them by not letting it. Or what's a betrayal is like an oath was made and they betrayed them. They said, okay, we won't fight you. You can come here and drink from this well. But as soon as they show up, we attack them and we fight them. So therefore, if they come to one of your wells, boom, you attack them and fight them. I can only see it in examples like that for mobilizing against people. I don't know. If, like, for example, if somebody goes on Facebook and just starts calling the people of this Quran study a bunch of idiots, I don't want to mobilize against them and go there and say, well, no, you're a bunch of idiots. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like it just,
Yeah.
That is just I feel like that would be just like dangling a carrot out there and having me uh, be uh, betray my soul or something. So I used a gross example. I'm just using a gross example of it. But I don't know how outside of war where we can go with that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Can someone else wanted to say something? I can go after them.
Yeah, I was just saying, is this not here that the people who were with the during war, this is my just this is my kind of question too, which were on war with the prophet, and then they got, I mean, of course, the hypocrites among the believers, and then when the situations comes, and then they take their step back, and they whatever agreements or promises they would have made, and then they break their promise. And then for that kind of people, God is mentioning here that because you reach agreement with them but they violate their agreements every time, they are not righteous, because they were among them, so they are not righteous. Therefore, if you encounter them in war, you shall set them up as a deterrent example for those who come after them, that they may take heed. So they will learn from these examples, these lessons which you will do with them. So they will, the next time they will be very careful when they will join you as a believers or make and will make any agreements with you. Because in other, some I remember, I'm just paraphrasing, in other verses where war is mentioned, that there were the groups who God was telling Muhammad that if they were with you, they will create a confusion. So they left Prophet, and they didn't like those kind of verses. You know what I'm talking about. I'm
Right.
just
Right.
paraphrasing that. Yeah. So this is
Okay.
this not about that? This is my
Um.
question.
Okay. Well. I want to comment. So, the way I read these verses, yeah, I mean, yes, one of the conditions I read is it's talking about like the verses. Some verses are talking specifically to the prophet, right? So like for example 865 says, "O you prophet, you shall exhort the believers to fight." Now that verse is specifically talking to the prophet, and no one can argue about that. But there's many other verses here that are very general, and like Ahmed said, they're very general. Like for example, it says in 856, you reach agreements with them, but they violate their agreements every time they're not righteous. Now, did that apply to Muhammad? Most likely, yes. But does that mean it does not apply to other people? No, it does, because the unrighteous people are unrighteous. And so that's a quality of these unrighteous people, whether they were with Muhammad or with you, that when you reach agreements with them, they violate their agreements every time they're not righteous. And so these types of things, but the one it says, therefore, if you encounter them in war, you shall set them up as deterrent examples for those who come after them, that they may take heed. So we know we're not going to encounter them in a actual war, quote unquote. So, but if we do encounter them in a similar setting, which is not a physical war, I see that you still set them up as a deterrent example without like a physical without it being in a physical realm. And when it talks about when you're betrayed by a group of people, you don't have to be betrayed by a group of people during war. You can just be betrayed by a group of people who are God's enemies, and they could betray you. You may have had agreements with them, and they may have broken their agreements. And then God says that if you're betrayed by them, you shall mobilize against them in the same manner. Like you're no longer bound by your agreements because they broke those agreements. And so if they're breaking their agreements and they're mobilizing against you by breaking their agreements and carrying out whatever schemes they're doing, I mean, you can counter those moves by you know uh, combating them in a similar fashion. So if they're like playing all these mind games to try to defeat you, you have to, do what's necessary to defeat them in whatever's most efficient way to do it. And I also like 859. It says, "Let not those who disbelieve think that they can get away with it. They can never escape." So again, it really goes back to the idea that God doesn't want wimps. He doesn't want us to be pushovers. And whether it's physical or non-physical, God says the quality of the believers are that one of the qualities of the believers is that they are kind and compassionate amongst themselves, and they're harsh and stern against the disbelievers. And if that just I think that's just natural for believers to be that way. That's God says the quality of the believers, But the thing is, a quality of the believer does not change in the Muhammad's time versus this time. The believer will always have the same qualities, and so if they were harsh during Muhammad's time, they're going to be harsh in our time too, whether it's a physical war or not. Physical war is just a way that these things are exposed and carried out, and so I mean that's that. But that still doesn't mean that your role as a submitter or your role as a striver would be any less significant. It'll just be a different setting, but you will face similar types of scenarios where you will have to do something, and that's how God's system is, that He will distinguish the strivers from the sedentary, and He will distinguish the weak believers from the strong believers, and so I mean, but yes, specifically certain verses will apply to war or with Prophet Muhammad, but I think those verses are explicit, like you can see it, in the verses. So thank you.
Yeah, I think all of that, absolutely, you can look at it that way, but I think at the same time you have to also, I I mean there are other verses that are checking us, so it's not an easy thing to be straightforward. I mean, I could
Yeah.
look at that and say, "Now that's what I can do right there." But then, it's how about remain steadfast in the face of utterances, disregard them, and disregard them all over the place. It's disregard them.
Yeah.
So if you punish, you shall inflict an equivalent punish. But if you resort to patience instead of revenge, it would be better for the patient ones. Now, I'm not sure if that one is about fighting in the cause of God or if that's about personal stuff. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
that one's not about fighting in the cause of God.
right,
It's about loving your enemy and being kind. When someone's bad to you, they all
right,
apply to your personal life. But your example was fair in the sense that if somebody's just being annoying and they're just calling you names and stuff like that, like these fake messengers on Facebook, that's exactly what they're doing. Nobody cares. They're saying, "Oh, you are an idol worshiper. You're this and that." I mean, they
right,
can say whatever they want. Nobody cares.
right, right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
but when you have people that are strategically, doing stuff, like, then you have those are things that you may have to, respond sometimes. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, no, I no, I didn't
Hi,
mean to.
I would like to.
Inshallah. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with Solomon. It's specific and it is general, because the continuation is from verse. Hold on. That you shall be prepared and you shall be,
Hmm.
and all that.
Yeah. 860.
It's 60, right? Um, that's right, and in many places, um, there is another verse where God says, if an equal response, but if you forgive, it's better for you, right? But
Yeah.
God also gives both situations. God does not. So in this situation too, if a group of people, like basically somebody has conspired to betray, it's a group of people, or like even if there is a community or a group of people or somebody, so God gives you permission. Obviously a believer would not do that, right? So it is basically about deceivers, hypocrites, non-believers, or whomever, uh, who's attacking a believer, more likely, right? uh, and they schemed something and betrayed you on purpose, and then God gives you permission to an equal response. You can do that. You know, you can choose to do that. You're not going to do any wrong, and you can choose not to do that. And but whatever, it is permitted from God. That's all I wanted to say.
May I say something to that?
you're
I just
you're the mod.
okay. Well, just for me, of course, I agree with all of that. I just want to say this. It's just defining what is attacking is a very difficult thing to see for me, because unless something is physical, I'm not sure attacks are anything but insults. I'm that's my whole thing. It's like when something, because you have to make a decision of when something. I mean, when you have a country of freedom of speech, let's say that, at what point is somebody's speech not speech, and that it's an attack or it's a oppression or something. And I can't find, for me personally, I can't find that place except when it comes to where it caused physical harm, or it makes me lose my job or my property or something like that kind of a thing, where there's some physical result to it. Otherwise, I don't see how those perceived attacks are not simply insults. That's my thing.
Yeah, so I think, Jeff, there's a very fine line. You're right. The thing is that the attacks that the what we're calling insults are not insults. Like, insult to me is like, hey, your neighbor gets mad at you, and he's like, hey, you know what? You're a slob. You're loud and this and that. You crank the stereo out loud, really loud. 2 in the morning, and you're lazy, or you get to work late. I do all that, by the way. I'm just kidding. So you do all this stuff, and someone comes and starts insulting you. That's an insult. Like, people start personally, like, attacks towards you for no religious motivations. That's very different. But I think the where you make a stand, specifically, is when it comes to religious issues, and they're making insults, right? But the reason, let's say you're really fighting, they're promoting lies, okay, and you're standing up against those lies, and then they're using those things that you're calling speech. They're using those to attack your religion, attack your values, attack what you stand against, and on top of that, attack your personal character too. So you should have no leg to stand on, and nobody should listen to you, right? So there is, I mean, it's not just like somebody comes and say, "Hey, you're an idiot," and now all of a sudden you have to fight him. I don't think anybody's will agree with that either. But it's a whole process. Like, it's a very systematic way of fighting that they use these ways to attack people. They try to turn people against you. They'll attack your line of thinking. They'll attack your character. They'll come from all different angles, right? So it's not just they're just throwing a bunch of insults. Like, we can't. I mean, if you could sum it down to just be people just throwing insults, personal insults to you and they have no religious motivations, then I would agree with that, most likely. But I mean, and those types of things, you would just not care. You would just let them call all kinds of names, let them call you names. That doesn't matter. But we're talking about when people deploy these strategies to systematically, fight with you for a specific religious cause. That's
Right.
what we're talking about.
I absolutely agree, and I have seen this time after time. Not only in this scenario, it 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 is strategic and it is well planned every time. Um, and yeah, they mix it, and they okay. Better not talk right now.
Oh, it's okay. It
Yeah.
really is. You can. It's not that heated. No, everyone
No,
knows.
it's not
No,
heated.
No.
But
I
it's
know
just
the whole
so
argument.
it's so close to it's so close to you that then you feel like you're kind of being defensive. But this is how it is. It's very simple. Then they attack you to make they think they're fighting in the cause of God, right? Here is
Mhm.
the because the verse there are verses but they say we are righteous, and devil has duped their works, so they're fighting, but God says like one group is fighting for God and one is fighting for tyranny. So they obviously both cannot be fighting for God, right? One is fighting for something else other than God. That's about it.
Yeah. The verse that always kind of trips me up also is that, I mean, let's call the submitters that have all these different understandings. And I think at 29:46, do not argue with the people of the scripture. And I feel like they fall into that category. They are Jews, Christians, and Muslims. That, well, some of them are. It's just they're the next phase. Jews, Christian, Muslims, submitters, or so-called submitters, or whatever. So we're arguing with a lot. I mean, they believe it. A lot of these people, they believe what they're putting out there. They believe it. They're believers, and they have a sect. They also have a sect, and it seems like Jews are a sect of submission. It became their own thing. Christians, Muslims, I don't know. You see what I'm saying? It's like at some point, it's like people who have the beliefs that are closest to ours become the biggest enemies, and therefore they are more of a threat, and therefore we allow our behavior to go even further. You see what I'm saying? It's like we would never be as angry at a Christian saying the same thing. It's just these people that are very close to us in the belief. And therefore now we're really angry, or now we say, oh, those are fighting God words. I'm just, yeah.
Sorry. So I think the verse that you read
Yeah.
that says, "Do not argue with the people of the scripture, except in the nicest possible manner." These are not people that are fighting your religion. This is like referring to people who are you're trying to convince about the religion. So there are people like
I'm sorry.
you
Yes,
like
yes. This is.
you see a neighbor on the street that you like, someone that you see potential. God says debate with them in the best possible manner. So you debate and argue with them in the best possible manner. That's what you're supposed to do. But the verse even says unless they transgress.
Yes.
So if they start transgressing during that time, then that's different. God, it clearly says unless they transgress, right? That's one
Right.
thing. So
Then
it's
what do you
referring to
do?
people.
Then what do you
So the
do?
thing is, huh?
Yeah. What I would like to know is when they transgress, what do you do? What does it say you do?
It doesn't say specifically in the verse what you do, but I'm saying it says this applies unless they transgress. If they don't transgress, this is what you do. You debate with them in the best possible manner. So that's the thing. Like, you know, if you see someone that has a potential to become a submitter, you treat everybody as a potential submitter who can be better than me and you. So you do your best to debate with them in the nicest possible manner. This is not talking about people. I mean, this is not talking about people who are fighting you and fighting your religion. Okay, there's a big difference. Like, there's a big difference between the person that Rashad is talking about in the footnote, who is taking the copies, the Saudi guy who's taking all the copies and burning them, versus somebody in his family that he's trying to give the message to who might be debating with him, you know? So that's the person he has potential for, he has hope for, he's not hopelessly stuck. You do your best, because if you repel these people, even though those people are destined for hell, you're going to earn the sin for repelling them. So you have to debate with them in the best possible manner. But we're talking about people who are fighting and attacking your religion. There's a huge difference.
Wait. I'm saying, all I'm pointing out is that there's the same religion. You got people who are saying, no, this is submission. No, this is submission. No, this is submission. And the fighting, huh?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not coming from a place where I know the answer. I'm saying that, the behavior devolves. I've seen it. And so it's like, okay, is this correct? Is this the right thing? So unless they transgress, does that mean, okay, if they transgress, then it's all on. I'm pulling out all stops. Or,
well, if they're fighting you, they're most likely.
Or do you walk away? Do you disregard? Do you say, like there's a time the messenger was talking, he said that, if they call you idol worshiper, if they say you're worshiping Rashad Khalifa, which this is an exact scenario we're talking about, this kind of a thing, people within the religion, you're worshiping Rashad Khalifa. Do you know what his response was? He said, smile at them, and walk away. That was his response. They're not even worth a second of your time.
We're not talking about the same thing.
How is it any difference? It's the types of people.
Because, first of all, this was not being done in a public setting where someone's attacking your religion. Okay, someone comes up to you and he says you're an idol worshiper, walk away, just smile at them. Who cares? We're talking about somebody who's fighting with you in a set stage, systematically attacking your religion and fighting with you, not personally just calling you names. There's a big difference. I don't know.
How? I can't see it. I don't see any, for example, every time that's happened to me, it's happened inside of a big fight. And it's in a systematic, in a big discussion, and then all of a sudden it'll come out. You worship. It'll be the final straw.
Someone says you worship Rashad. Someone says you worship Rashad. You just smile at them.
No,
I'm saying all they're gonna say.
No, I'm saying
if that's all they're gonna say, then yeah, you can do that.
No,
but what I'm saying is that's not all they're saying. They're trying. There's other people. First of all, there's other people that they're trying to convince. They're not just saying, "Hey, Edward, you're an idol worshiper," or "Hey, Jeff, you're an idol worshiper." They're saying what you're doing is idol worship. This is idol worship. You're practicing this and this and this. So while you can smile at them, you also have the responsibility to counter their argument that they're making by saying such and such is an idol worship. For example, if somebody's saying that listening to the messenger of the covenant is idol worship, and then they say, Jeff, you're an idol worshiper, I wouldn't care about that person. You just smile at them and whatever, because that person's stuck in their disbelief. But what about the other people that they're promoting it to? To them, you have a responsibility too, to counter that. If this person comes up to you in a personal setting and they say, hey, someone calls you and say you're an idol worshiper, or shows up to your door, that's a very different scenario than somebody who says, hey, Jeff is an idol worshiper, by the way, guys, and this is why, and this is idol worship, and this is idol worship. Then you don't just walk away and smile, because then there's a lot more done there.
I disagree. I think you're reading a lot into that.
Please. There's a lot more damage done then, because yes, you do. If someone just comes and does this thing, then you could smile at them. And that's fine, because because the concept here is that why do you smile at them? Because you're not going to waste your time on someone who's already stuck. You know, he's stuck in his ways. Why do you have to waste your breath to try to, like, there's a lot of people, a lot of these people, right? They sent me, I'm just giving you my example because I think that will help put things in perspective. Okay. There's many people that will send me private messages, okay, telling me all kinds of names. I don't care. I don't have to say anything because what I say to myself, okay, this person's already stuck in his disbelief. He's ignorant, whatever. And he'll make a like a sarcastic remark, and I'll make one, and whatever, I'll smile at it and I'll laugh, send a laughing emoji. I know we had a discussion about emojis too, but you send a laughing or smiling emoji, and that's it. Because what's the point? And there's no point. But if it comes to a different scenario where someone says, hey, such and such is a hypocrite, or they don't say that, but they say that, you know, this thing is this and this is idol worship, and what this person's doing is idol worship because it's this and this, and they post verses, then that's a very different scenario. Then you have to not only do you have to address that issue, but you have to address that person also, because what that person's doing is they're directly fighting the message. Someone coming and calling you an idol worshiper, they're not fighting the message per se by doing that. They're just, like, you know, annoying, like you said. They're calling you names, so who cares? Anyways, I think there's really, I don't want to go back and forth because I just don't, for the interest of other people's time and everything. But I think I made my point very clear as to, yes, there is a situation, there is a time and place, and while there might be scenarios where you might disagree, where you might feel that sometimes the response is warranted, maybe you're right. Sometimes you shouldn't say anything. You know, we're not perfect people. However, a lot of these scenarios did warrant, from my experience, that we see, a lot of them do warrant an explanation. There's a lot of people that will benefit from listening to the other side about what's really happening, and defining the magnitude of what's being said is very wrong, and explaining why. So that is important. But obviously, you know, it has to be done in a mature and righteous manner, in the sense that, you know, you should be able to make your point clear in the best way.
And that's all I'm saying.
So,
that's
right.
It.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Inshallah. Totally agree. I just think, though, I'm just saying that I think we got to check ourselves. That's all. Just that's all. It's
right. Yeah.
You know, there's someday I'm gonna play it or give the audio, post the transcript of it. But there's one time when a guy goes into a Quran study, and he's a outright enemy of God, basically telling the messenger he's a liar and all these other things straight up, and he was given a long he got to explain his whole thing right there in the Quran study, and the messenger right there with him, and he went on and on. And the only thing he did is say, well, we need to say Fatiha in there, made him do Fatiha. And it is, I believe it was an example of because Satan's allowed to give his side. And I think I saw an example of where you can't control it. You know, Satan's going to get his message out there. You can say, you know, the message, the way you see it. And then if Satan's going to counter that, he gets to do that. And then how it devolves after that, that's the question for me. It's like, I don't know, we should step out. I think once it's said, it's said. I mean, I look at how the messenger who came up last week was accused of this sexual impropriety or some problem. And amazing.
I don't think we should repeat those kind of things.
Let's not. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. I'm saying it came up last week, and I'm saying I can't. I mean, if I saw disregard, that was disregard. He totally disregarded that. That's what I thought. I don't
Yeah,
mean.
yeah.
I think we're totally talking about very different issues here, Jeff. That what does God mean by be harsh and stern with the hypocrites and disbelievers? Okay. Now, religion never has threat from outside ever. You know, yeah, people will. I'm talking about religion, not those who are practicing religion. All right, they can have threat. People can bully them. People can be physically aggressive towards them in different communities, which is is not accustomed to that religion. We see that a lot these days. But religion itself uh, never has threat from outside. Outsiders don't come and change the religion. Only the hypocrites and people from inside, they work to corrupt the religion. It is always has been the case. Christians themselves, so-called Christians themselves, created the Trinity. Muslims themselves created the Hadith, right? And they inserted two fake verses in the Quran. Wasn't a Christian or a Jew or Hindu or both. It was basically close to. They were Sahabas, right? Now, when these the magnitude is this big that you see falsehood is being entered by some people, and then they are the aggressors, right? They
Yes.
are God says they're trying to what is the word, like putting the light off of God. That's huge. And this is your time to strive against it. Let's not put the word fight or whatever. It has many. Fighting has several meanings. It has a multi-layered meanings in many situations, different ways. Let's talk about resistance. How would you resist in this time and age? You're not gonna go physically and stand in front of them. How would you resist? You're gonna resist every single possible way to say, first of all, this is wrong according to Quran. This goes against God's laws and Quran and his whole system, right? You're gonna repeatedly say that. You will combat against their debate, and if they are crude, you're gonna be equally crude. You will not aggress more than the other party. God does not like the aggressor. But if they're aggressing, you will aggress in the same manner, whatever that manner is. We are permitted to do that. Otherwise, we are trying to stop or resist the falsehood being spread out there, because they're powerful people. They have already gotten to so many people in other communities. And this is your chance to strive for your own soul. What else? You're not doing it for people or anybody else. You're doing it for yourself. You understand the magnitude. You want to strive in the cause of God for your own credits. This is not like for anybody else.
What you just said one statement there, and could you explain what you mean by that? What do you mean by if they're crude, then you be crude? What do you
God
mean?
says in the same manner. But
No,
you equally you do not want to aggress more than, let's say, whoever has aggressed. God does not permit you to become the first aggressor. If they have aggressed and they are spreading the falsehood, then your response can be as equal. If how crude they are, and so can be you. I'm not saying if they're verbally going, you pick a rock and throw at them. You don't do that.
I don't know. Okay, I know. Okay, and you're saying that 858. You're saying that they betrayed by a group. We were in a war. You're saying it's a verbal war. So you attached war, meaning it's a war of religious ideas. And what you're
It doesn't
saying.
have to be a war.
No,
It is a
what I'm
betrayal
saying.
in any kind of betrayal in the cause of God. Yeah.
I believe that there's when it comes to physical force, I mean you can't do nice physical resistance. See what I mean? It's all clean when it comes to physical, because when it gets to physical, resistance has to be equal. Immense, you know what I mean? You can't fight swords with spit guns or something, spitball guns. It has to be the same. So I can see that equality when you get to the physical nature. But when it comes to like being crude, for example, I say, well, no, that crudeness has no real effect. It's actually reflects bad on them. And so by bringing me into the crudeness of it, I don't see it. Crudeness does not counter crudeness. I don't see that. Crudeness, to me, what counters crudeness is disregarding it. For example, the opposite of hatred is not love, it's disinterest. I mean, excuse me, opposite of love is not hate, it's disinterest. So to me, there's opposites. I don't know why I threw that one in there, but I'm throwing in disinterest or disregard. I can't see how crude can be fought with crude. It just doesn't work.
Would you? Okay, so are you saying that if falsehood is being promoted or spread forcefully, with a lot of magnitude and force behind it, so how do you counter that? How do you resist
I say
against it? Mm-hmm.
You state the truth and then you let them. You state the truth.
Leave?
Yes, because you state the truth and you let them do what they're going to do, because you let them. It's all verbal. It's not physical. They're not actually doing a thing to somebody. They're not it's just
and how do you become harsh and stern against hypocrites?
Harsh and stern. Okay, for example, when I hear the messenger, like I always think of
let's talk
I always think of Moses.
Let's talk about Quran. Let's talk about, because in messenger's time things did not happen at this magnitude from hypocrites. Like there was one or two single guys and he was still in the process of giving message. It wasn't a full-blown like hundreds of people fighting with each other. It wasn't in messengers of the covenant's time. Let's talk about Quranic examples.
Moses.
I was kind of going along his line of reasoning. So with the messenger too, because he was fighting with the traditional Muslims, right? So go ahead, Edward. I mean, Jeff. Sorry, I keep calling you Edward.
Oh no, that's all right. I'll be Edward. You know what I was thinking? First one that comes to my mind is Moses. Let the people of Israel go. Harsh, stern. Let them go. You know what I mean? Harsh and stern, straight to the point.
That was action. That was the action he had to do. He had to tell them, let them go.
Right, but it's harsh and stern. I'm talking about, I'm not like, I don't see Moses going to Pharaoh and saying, you're such an idiot.
No, it's in the Quran.
You're such an idiot?
No, he's not saying you're such an idiot, but he's saying
that was command from God.
You're boasting. You're boasting. He says you are boasting that you did me a favor while enslaving the children of Israel. That's harsh.
That's fact. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. He's countering falsehood with truth. He's saying this is what you're doing. You're boasting. You're saying this. You're doing that. I agree with that. That's not harsh. Yeah. That's argumentation. I was only. This was born from the crude statement. This was born from the crude. The thing that if they are crude against you, you mobilize against them in a crude way as well. And to me, I can't see how crude fights crude.
No,
I just don't.
No, but is that Quranic that equal response? What is an equal response then?
Well, what did Abraham say that doesn't Abraham say that you will see nothing from us except animosity and hatred? So how do you see animosity?
Yes, Jeff. Come, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
yeah. How do you see animosity?
Animosity?
Yeah.
I see animosity is like basically we don't, when they see them approaching their tents or something like that, just basically standing out there staring at them down, letting them know, who are you to come near this, kind of a just more of a demeanor. I don't see it in taking this verbal verbal stance where you lower yourself to try to, you put it out there, or you go to their tents, you go to everybody's tents and you're pasting on their door, that you're going to go to hell and you're such an idiot and all this other stuff.
I don't know.
Who does that?
I don't even know why you're saying that, because that's not what we're talking about. But the thing is, how do you differentiate? My next question is, how do you differentiate crude from harsh? Because you said crude doesn't fight crude. God says be harsh and stern. So
yeah, I totally agree with that.
And be harsh and stern without any explanation.
Have you ever seen
be harsh and stern with them? Doesn't even say if they say something or do something. As soon as hypocrites are exposed, this is your behavior. It should not be friendly with them. You should not extend. God says, do not extend your hands.
Nicest possible manner doesn't apply.
I still think that again, it's I don't think you fight crudeness with crudeness. Crudeness to me is crude. It's a lower of your character.
What is crude? What is the difference between harsh and crude?
Because, I said it before. I believe when Moses says, let the people of Israel go, that's harsh and stern. I believe when the messenger, Rashad Khalifa was, I'm telling you, when Rashad said to Suzanne in there, I think he was harsh and stern. He said, he basically was saying it harsh. You're going to go home. And you literally have Satan waiting for you at home, because they had people very harsh, very to the point, very stern.
That's harsh. Yeah, that is harsh.
No, I'm just saying it's harsh is not harsh. Doesn't mean lower your character. I don't see anybody lowering their character. Crude. That is lowering.
Crude
yes, it is.
Harsh. No, crude.
No. Oh, you want to look it up? Crude. I'll look it up. Crude.
Can I say something? Salãmun Alaykum, everyone. Hello.
Salãmun Alaykum.
Yeah, I just want to say that when Ibrahim said that you will see nothing from us except animosity and harshness, what point he said it? Hatred. Okay, what point he said it? He said it when they threw him in the fire.
Right.
Not on the debate or calling him names, but they threw him in the fire where God saved him, and after that, like, he took his people and leaving that place. At that point, he said that you will see nothing to the point. And that was the lowest point, like where you want to kill someone. Like that was really a war, physical, as Jeff is saying.
Hey, Jeff, sorry.
And in our time, God didn't impose any war on us. Thank you, God. But it's with the words, and you want to use a firm words or hard
we're talking about words. There is no physical war here.
No physical war, but then the war of words and all that. Alhamdulillah, God has protected our generation. We don't know for the future generation they are going to face the war or not, because the verses are there. But what applies to our time, that I agree with Jeff to a certain point, that you come to that extent where you are just saying you will see nothing from us except hatred and animosity and harsh and stern and all that. This is the point where they try to take your life, and they are just banishing you from your land and all that.
Okay, so God says that Abraham was very kind and clement. And he said to his father that you will see nothing from us except animosity and hatred. That's not when he was being put in the fire, by the way. they tried to put him in the fire, I think, when he was young. That's when they tried to put him in the fire when he was trying to destroy the statues. And secondly, Jeff, you asked me to look up harsh and crude. So I did. Actually, harsh is a lot worse than crude, by the way. Okay. If you look at crude, it says in a natural way, raw and unrefined state, rudimentary. Okay. And number 3 says offensively coarse or rude, especially in relation to sexual. But number 1 and number 2 is just means raw. Crude just means raw, like something that's not refined. Okay. But if you look at harsh, it says unpleasantly rough and jarring to the senses, cruel or severe, grim and unpalatable, having an undesirably strong effect, severe, barbarous, savage, relentless, intolerant, illiberal, brassy, all of these. So these are like very strong words. And so my understanding is then look, God has made the Quran very simple and straightforward. And if we want to like look for a certain way, like if you want to look for a certain way, like you want to make a point, like you can find verses in the Quran and you can like circulate your argument in a way that it sounds like it's going there, and you'll see verses that will point you in that direction. But for me, I don't know. I see there, it's like written very clearly that the believers are kind and compassionate amongst themselves and harsh and stern with the disbelievers and hypocrites. Now we want to try to redefine what harsh means and redefine what stern means and redefine what fight means. Then really we can just redefine everything. Everything can have multiple meanings, and there's going to be a certain meaning that might be more suitable for where I would like it to stay, right? But I think that just really complicates the religion for us. God says the believers are like pussycats with each other, and they're like lions with the disbelievers and the hypocrites. So ask yourself, if you're just going to go and state your point and just walk away, that's not what a lion is. Okay? You're just downplaying the magnificence of a lion by saying that, which is fine. But I'm just saying, if you want to look at the literal example of a lion and a pussycat, that's literally what I'm saying. The believers are kind and compassionate amongst themselves. They're like pussycats with each other, extremely kind and clement. And with the disbelievers and hypocrites, they're harsh and stern. Obviously, that doesn't apply to every person on the street who's a disbeliever. That goes to the comment about the debating with them and arguing with them in the nicest possible manner. You do. But then there's people that insist on that, and they're stuck in their ways, and they're actually mobilizing and fighting the believers. Those are the kinds of people you do have to be harsh and stern with, and you do have to set them up as an example too for others to see that what they're doing is very wrong, and this is a serious thing what they're doing. And just walking away or smiling at it obviously is not going to cut it, And the point though is here that God says in the Quran that that is the quality of the believers, and God also says that if we don't do that, then God will substitute people in our place who will do that, right? That's God. So we kind of have to take it for its face value here, because there's a time and place for it. If you are unclear about how you would formulate those arguments without, it's not about looking like you have the higher ground, or like people think, oh wow, look at Jeff, he's so righteous, like everything he says is so kind. It's not about that. There's other things in play here, and so you have to make sure that you follow all the different angles. You don't have to break one commandment for another,
Masha
right?
Allah, yeah.
So we have to be very very careful, like how we do that. That's all I can say. I can't convince you. At the end of the day, it's your prerogative how you want to be. But I'm just sharing my understanding and just basically telling you where I'm coming from. So.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate it. I do understand. The truth is I understand the whole thing, and I tried to apply it, and what I realize is I find is that there's so many other areas that say, no, don't behave like that. And also that's the problem. And also when it comes to fighting, I kind of think to myself, well, when is it really fighting? And that's the thing. And when do you walk away? I don't know. When do you disregard? When have you made your point? When have you fought falsehood with truth? You know, how come truth isn't enough to say this is the truth? If you do this, this may be your fate, and that's it. It's been said. You know, what else more can be said? You know, I don't know. See, I don't know about the engaging. To me, that's the problem with this.
What
The
about
engaging.
striving against the hypocrites? What is striving then? How do you strive? So that's kind of, it's a whole different level than you say the truth and leave. Striving is, you strive against them.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, again, this is such a slippery slope because I gladly take the position to fight to present this point. And obviously what happens is I get the stain of somebody who is wimpy and doesn't want to stand up for the truth and these kinds of things. I'll take that gladly just to be able to present these views. And the views I'm saying is that character matters. In fact, it matters a lot. And also that if we disregard our character and we call everything fighting, if we abuse the term fighting such that we can lower our character in certain circumstances, I'm not comfortable with that either. And maybe it's my lack of understanding of the Quranic verses, but I'm still not convinced. I still feel like, but that's all right. I don't need to go on any further with it. But at this point, I'm still not 100% convinced. But God willing, I will be convinced one way or another, some way. You know, God creates circumstances, and you know, I mean, I just don't see why somebody has to be a juvenile, you know, because that's how I see. This is the thing. I saw a lot of that on their side.
Juvenile.
No, I think they were. I think that there is a tendency to think that, hey, I'm going to defend my people or I'm a religion and I don't care what I do. You know, this thing that kind of puffing out your chest. I kind of believe that at some point it becomes hurtful. I saw it on the other side, you know, too. And so I feel like that's holding out a carrot for us to lower our character somehow. I don't know.
No, you lower your character when you resort to name calling and personal insults and those types of things. When somebody's being an idol worshiper and you're saying, hey, Satan's waiting for you when you go out, and like you said, that's a fact. And so if you tell them that, you're not breaking any commandments. You know, you don't have to be nice to them. Oh, it's okay, go home, you know.
Right.
Basically, what your rebuttal should be those verses which talk very harshly about it. I don't see a lot of people said, oh, you look like this, or you're this person, and you're that person.
Yeah.
Basically,
I mean, people, sometimes
I have
people,
seen from their side,
right,
like so much personal attack and diverting the issue towards a whole personal area. And many people still think it was Solomon's personal issue. Can you imagine how wickedly this was steered towards one person and then constantly lowering his character and many others and bringing people's past? Oh, you were
but
this
see,
and you were that.
that's the thing. Like, they will use these types of tactics
Yeah,
to make it so it becomes personal. So then everybody looks at it
It
like,
looks
oh, it's
like a
just
personal thing.
personal.
Still,
And it's so personal. It's about him. Who cares? And everybody else loses.
yeah,
Doesn't
it is
care
still a
about what the
personal.
issue is.
They think it's Solomon's one-man war, a personal issue, while all of us, whatever we are thinking doing, is we're following Solomon blindly. I hear this from London. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you know, the message came to me that I am, I'm idolizing Solomon and blindly following him. This is how they.
Oh, Lord Solomon.
I imagine, you know,
That's messy.
it's like from the get-go, from the very beginning, and before that, whatever Solomon was writing, I'm not even aware. I was so like a continent away from here, and independently thinking what I was thinking, Solomon thinking here, and we all. When I came here, then Jeff, you were
Yeah.
there, and other people. You know, it was never like that, but this is how they do it,
Yeah.
and that's very vicious.
I remember
Very
when I first.
calling me an idol
Yeah.
worshiper too.
Yeah.
Can I say three things?
Please go ahead.
Okay, first of all, disbelievers are disgusting. Second of all, we shouldn't argue for the disbelievers, feeling sorry for the feelings or their rights. Who cares about their rights or feelings? You should argue for God and the truth.
Masha Allah.
Even if you step on some foot, who cares? Let them scream and cry. Just stand up for God and the truth. That's what we should focus on. Don't argue for the disbelievers. Oh, maybe I will hurt them. Maybe I will look bad. No, just step on their foot. You're not intentionally stepping on their foot. Your intention is to stand up for the justice, for the truth, for God. That's your mission. That's your objective. And then, okay, maybe you step on some foot. Who cares? Let them cry. And third, I think I forgot. This third.
Third one, just don't forget about these two.
Oh,
What was the third one?
Oh my God, why? Okay, maybe later.
But Jeff, we can all agree to disagree. All right, this is a friendly conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Yeah.
See, again, I know that art. I know the argument really well, and I understand it. And it's like, I can see it that way, and I have said it. I can see it that way, but I can see it this way, this from this other angle as well. And
I think it's different stage right now. Like we all,
perhaps,
yeah, we
perhaps
can be, yeah, and like of course.
because I'm saying that okay, at the core of the perspective that I'm entertaining is the notion of freedom of speech and the notion that we cannot force anybody to think anything. You can't stop people from saying what they're saying. They get to say the things they want. The notion of disregard, this notion of just ignore them, that they're just exposing themselves, and the notion that if people believe them, let them. Let them. It's Satan's right. He gets to attract his people. Let them. That kind of a thing. That's the whole part of this. Is that I don't know. It's like because for me, that's where when it comes to war, there's one place where you have to fight back, and that's when you're facing physical resistance. You gotta fight back because words and fluff and flowers isn't going to help. It's got to be physical. So it's clean and clear there for me. Now we start stepping into these other areas and causing justification for things. It's not as clean for me. And I think it's disingenuous to act like it's straightforward and otherwise it's not, if you don't see it straightforward, then, I can't help you or something like that. I think that, there are deep concepts that we have to check ourselves with, and I've mentioned them. So I don't think that we've hit the bottom of this yet.
Sure. So what I think the core issue here is that what is a war, right? In this time and age, among the submitters.
What's that?
I think the core issue here is that what I'm hearing from you is, Jeff, that you don't think this was a war.
I'm not sure if the rules of a war apply here. I think it's more rules of argument and that's about it. Argument. It was arguing.
Can I
Sure.
jump in?
Sure.
I think it does apply to war, because you have informational war, you have cultural war, you can have all kinds of wars.
Or Cold War.
You can have Cold War, you can have psychological wars, you can have all
Yes.
kinds of wars. So
Right. But you have to balance that with freedom of speech and freedom for people to say things. Absolute freedom. That's where this has to be looked at in context of that people get to say these things. People get to have Satan's message and put it out there. That's the war of that message.
Jeff, when we talk about freedom of speech, right? I mean, so you're saying basically when these people are going about and saying this stuff, like, I mean, what does that mean? That we should respect their freedom? You're saying just let them say what is wrong about God? Like, someone wants to blaspheme and spread it, you should let them spread it? Or should you counteract with the truth? Because because you're talking about freedom, I mean, what they're doing, it doesn't justify what they're doing as righteous. What they're doing is fighting the message, right? So
fighting God.
Yeah. So you're saying we should be nice to them because we are not respecting their freedom otherwise?
I'm saying this.
I'm trying to reduce it to the simplest form.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to make you look bad here. But
I don't feel
it to the simplest form so I can understand what you're really saying here.
I'm saying
when
this.
You bring up freedom of speech. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I can see what you're saying. What I'm saying is this: is that if somebody isn't preventing you from speaking the truth, let them put as much garbage out there as they want to. They get that. They have that right. If they want,
but you're saying as long as they're not physically fighting you, let them say whatever they want to say about the religion and just let them.
Yeah,
that's not what God says in the Quran. Like, you have to counter it, right?
Wait. Here's the thing. You're out there. You've got a site.
No, because if you say something, then you're not respecting their freedom. I mean, I know you're saying we should say something, but then when you bring the freedom in, then you're really making it confusing, because then if you do want to make it that way, then let them say whatever they want. And you don't say anything.
Yes, you can't. Here's the thing. You can say what you want, and that's the beautiful part of freedom of speech.
So then freedom of speech has nothing to do with it.
Okay. Well, no, I'm saying to you this, that let them say their thing, however twisted it is. Let them. Those who believe it deserve to. That's the bottom line. You can say, look, this is the truth. It's in the Quran. This is what the messenger said. This is it. It's all straightforward. It's there. If I may God guide the believers. I mean, that's
so. How about so when somebody comes to masjid, right, and they start blaspheming like this guy Eric or some other people, like, why should you tell them not to come to masjid, that you're a bad influence then? And I mean, let them say whatever they want. Like, those are examples too. I mean, especially when you're talking about a person, so especially when you're using a person as an example who's not here to clarify himself, like the messenger of you frequently are quoting the messenger of the covenant, and I don't think it's fair, because you don't have the full extent, or maybe you're talking about another person. You might be, I mean, there's a high chance here that you might be misrepresenting his position on a lot of things, like when you're using him as an example. I'm saying, because we're quoting certain examples, but you're using it to drive a certain point, which I don't see the messenger of the covenant being the kind of person that you're describing. You know, he wasn't like that. He was
and
very,
I haven't,
he
and that's the thing. I haven't seen him be the type of. Here's
he
exactly.
wasn't like
I've not seen.
he wasn't like the person that would turn the other cheek. In fact, he explained that. He said that's not what the Quran says.
Nobody's saying turn the other cheek. Nobody. You can
Well,
fight.
that's
You
what
can fight.
I'm
Paul
getting
says
is
the
you're
truth.
saying what they're saying.
I
Stuff
am
like that.
not.
Just
No,
turn
you're
the other
twisting.
cheek.
Okay. You know what?
Isn't that what? No,
I don't understand
that's
how
what
you.
I
No,
get. That's
see,
what I
here's the
thought,
thing.
though.
If not, here's what I see. What I am saying to you this. You're saying the opposite of what you're advocating is wimpiness and turn the other cheek. And what I'm saying to you is that is not the opposite. That's not the position I'm taking. I'm not even advocating the opposite. I'm advocating
Let's
checking.
just think about what is wimpy. A wimpy.
No, I don't. The wimpy.
I'm saying wimpy. First of all, wimpy is not my word. Wimpy is from the Messenger of the Covenant.
No, I know. Here's the thing. Wimpy would be to just not lay down and not talk to you about this, about standing up.
Wimpy.
What I'm saying is
God
this.
does not want you to be a wimp.
Wimpy would be somebody who would just not would not want to take the position that I've taken in this Quran study, knowing the audience that's here. I know where you guys stand. I understand it. I've advocated it before.
So you're saying you're not being a wimp to us, but you'd rather be.
No. I'm saying that, you know what? Here's what I'm saying. That a wimp is somebody who's afraid to stand up for the understanding that they're seeing. That's all. I don't see the understanding that you have it to the extent. I see it. I do see it, but I don't. Okay.
Can you read Surah 5, verse 79?
Okay.
Because that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Okay.
How does that play in?
Yeah, apathy. No, okay. Apathy is definitely not saying anything. Nobody's advocating not saying anything. I'm saying you fight falsehood with truth, and you say the truth, but you don't fight crudeness with crudeness. What I'm saying is you're not forced to be crude. Nobody can force you to be crude. Nobody can lower you. No, you can only be forced when physical threat is. Then you have to raise your hand and you have to fight. Nobody is I don't care what somebody says. There's nothing that can be said that can force you to be crude. You're not forced to be crude. That's a personal decision. That's saying I'm going to that level. There's no, that's what I'm saying is when you dissect this stuff, a lot of it comes down to where does fighting begin and where is it just insult? And when I say this, it does bleed into the notion of freedom, because at some point, when is somebody not free? Ultimately, the only time when somebody's not free is when they're prevented by physical force from living the way they want to live, living in their house, living their religion. That is ultimately the defining line. Anything after that, you got to present a pretty good argument for me to understand how somebody is being forced. You see what I'm saying? It's like there has to be some decisions made here. Looking at.
Okay. How would you counter, for example, in Sweden, the children are taught safe sex, to use condoms. These are like 12 years old, 13 years, 14-year-old children taught about safe sex, and they are encouraged to have sex even.
Yeah,
So how do you counter that? Do you go
you're a parent at home and you say what they are teaching, that's Satan's world, and you are fortunate to live in the house of a submitter. And this is the truth. This is what the Quran says, and they are allowed.
The people here are secular. They don't care if the children are having sex.
Yeah, that's the life God gave them. You can tell. You say this is wrong. Is what the Quran says, but you're free to do that, and you're free to teach your kids that as well. That is wrong, and you see what I'm saying? We can't force. It's maximum freedom
But
because
this being forced on the children.
no, because they don't have to do it. It's just they're persuading. It's a persuasion. It's not forcing them. They're giving a message.
They are being manipulated, brainwashed.
They are
brainwashed into
what
homosexuality
is
as well.
brainwash? Brainwash is a form of persuasion, and you fight falsehood with truth. That's what you fight it with, not by what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Anyway, so that's the core of it for me. Anyway, I think I've said enough. It's that's why I haven't really gotten to the bottom of this, is because I think that ultimately it comes down to that. It comes down to the definition of when are you really being forced to do something? At what point can I not really worship my God as I want to worship Him?
So but see, you're saying then they have to, unless you are being forced in some way, like, they can fight you as long as they're not forcing you to do a certain thing. You're fine. Don't fight them.
I'm saying fight falsehood with truth. I'm saying
visibly
I'm not advocating being crude. That's what
Okay,
see. Don't mix this as if I'm not advocating. See, both this has happened twice now. I've heard it here from Ahmed suggesting that apathy is what I'm advocating when I'm not. And see, I'm saying to you, don't listen. Listen. I need to say it. I am not advocating apathy, and I am not advocating not standing up for the truth. I am saying that being crude is another thing. I'm saying mobilizing against them is not lowering your character. That's what I'm saying.
So I would just say to that, I don't think you're advocating apathy per se, but you're advocating that fighting against these people is lowering your character.
No, I'm saying the way you do it. It's the way. It's the way we do it.
Is the way we do it, so we're lowering
the
our
way.
character by the way.
Yes, it matters. It matters.
So
it
you're
matters.
saying by the way we're fighting them, we're lowering our character.
Yes, it can be that way. Yes.
It can be that way, but who is doing that?
Yeah, who's doing that? Are we actually doing that?
It has happened. It has.
We're pointing out the truth.
You know what? Here's the thing. I have done it, and I've felt pretty bad after doing it, and deleted what I did for doing it. And that's the thing. I've always felt comfortable fighting falsehood with truth. That I never felt a problem with.
That's great.
What did you do?
It's online. You can go look for it if you want. I know you.
Give me an example so I can tell.
I don't have it at my disposal right here. But
hypothetical example or something.
No, I don't want to do that. The truth is, I've expressed it, and you've expressed.
But you're saying, do you disagree? Like, in terms of like everything that was done was lowering our character, or there were just maybe one or two instances?
No. I'm saying that there is it's a principle that is possibly being set aside. Is that, and I think it was well stated by, and maybe she didn't mean it the way I took it, but Nudrat said that you basically mobilize against them. So if they're crude against you, you go crude against them. That I don't see as Quranic. Basically, when you have a principle like that then it can bleed into a lot of little areas. That's what I'm saying.
Well, so I think the problem I see is that you don't believe that you should be harsh and stern with them. No, and you're using a very watered down definition of what harsh and stern is. You're trying to redefine it, and I don't think that's gonna help you. I think it's gonna hurt you in the long run. And I'm saying it in like out of love, Because
but you think I'm not saying it out of love as well. I think your understanding is going to hurt you, and already has hurt you.
I'm just making it clear to you that the reason I'm saying it out of love, because what she said was very Quranic, she said that we have to be harsh and stern with these people who are fighting against us. The crude.
No. She said we have to mobilize against them, and when they're crude, we're crude. Don't take the word.
And that's what Quran says, because God says you have to be harsh and stern with the disbelievers and hypocrites.
You have to be harsh and stern. Harsh and stern
against you. So you have to be harsh and stern with them. That's what the Quran says.
Yeah.
Now you're using another word that's actually less severe than harsh, and you're saying it's wrong to be that way. I'm saying in the dictionary, being harsh is a lot worse than being crude. And I'm saying what she said, being crude, if they're being crude, like they're being unrefined, you can be unrefined. Yeah, you'll be harsh. There's nothing wrong about what she said.
I am saying that there's a place where what you do is you only lower yourself. That's what I'm saying. And if you don't see it, I can't help you see it.
Yeah, the problem is you're saying that if you're harsh and stern with the disbelievers and hypocrites, you're actually lowering yourself.
No, I'm saying that if you lower yourself, if you wrestle with the pigs, you get muddy.
You're thinking that it's lowering yourself. God says you be harsh and stern with them. You're saying that if you're harsh and stern with them, you're lowering yourself.
And when I know exactly, and it comes down to how you see harsh and stern, and we've come to this point before. Again, and I really believe harsh and stern means very exact and serious, and even that's what I used in that khutbah.
Very exact
and serious, very serious, very serious.
Why doesn't he say be serious with them? Why doesn't God say be serious with them? He uses the word harsh and stern. Is that all it really means?
Look, you know what? You are doing what you just basically were accusing me of by saying you have an understanding, and you're taking one verse.
Serious. You're just
okay. Here's the thing. The truth is they're both on the table. I reject your understanding of it right now, but it doesn't mean I will forever. I still believe that the understanding that I am trying to present, that our behavior is on trial here, that it matters. It is part of being righteous. And I don't believe that harshness means that all the floodgates are open and you can be crude and ridiculous as you want to be. And I don't think you are either. I don't think you would advocate that either. But
you should think about it. I think right now you're probably, on the defense. So probably think about this discussion later. I don't know, because it seems like you're mixing up like crude and harsh. I mean, harsh and stern is from the Quran. And like I said, it's a lot worse in the dictionary, the meaning of harsh, than it is for being crude. Crude just means unrefined.
I don't agree that I'm mixing it up. I think that harsh and stern can literally mean just like the messenger. You don't want me to use the messenger. I brought up Moses.
The messenger was really.
Wait. I don't see it. I don't see what you're talking about. I look at Moses. You say don't bring up the messenger because I'm taking messenger out of context. Are you talking over me? Is that what's going on here? I just want to be able to finish this.
No,
I am not finished with it. I still haven't finished.
I'm not talking over you.
Just gonna let me do it? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I said go ahead. I'm not going to talk over you.
What I'm saying to you is that I presented an argument that, for example, of Moses as an adult saying, "Let the people of Israel go." I see that as harsh and stern, and God will smite you if you don't. Basically, harsh, stern, to the point, serious, adult. I get that. That's how I see that. I also see that.
How is that harsh and stern?
So it's harsh and stern. It is. You're using God's
farmer and say, "Let these sheep go." And what's wrong with
if I say God says let these pigs go, and
that's not harsh.
Yeah, that's harsh. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Just let them go.
No, it's stern. It's harsh. It's like, don't you hear my voice? I'm saying, let the children of Israel go. I mean, watch Moses. Watch the Ten Commandments. We've all seen it.
But we don't know if that's the tone of his voice when he said it. It could have been.
I
That was
know,
just bad
I
acting.
know, but I'm.
It
You
could
know
have
what?
been. It
I
could have
honestly,
That was just bad acting.
Let me
I'm
finish
sorry.
my joke.
no,
It could have been.
Poor
honestly.
sound quality too.
It could be hello, Salãmun Alaykum. You don't
Maybe
know.
he just went up to him and said, "Let them go." You know.
Yeah, or argue. Maybe
Do you,
the
do
Quran
you
is just
believe?
saying a paraphrase.
Do you believe do you believe that a society that their general character can devolve? Do you believe that? Do you believe that people can lose a sense of decency? I do.
Yes.
I do believe that can happen, and I do
Yeah, it can
believe that we
happen.
get. I do believe I've seen that happen in my
you're
life.
saying, but I think you're taking it to the extreme. That's the difference.
No,
I'm agreeing with you.
you know,
That to an extent,
unless
thing
I
is, we have the Quran to keep ourselves balanced.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I don't think I have the final answer. I really don't. But the thing is I feel like you believe you do have the final answer, and
Well,
I've
I think
heard
it's
it.
very straightforward, Jeff.
Oh,
mean,
I know, and
I'm agreeing. I agree with the fact that when people debate with people online, sometimes they can be juvenile and whatever, right? And that's not the best way to do it. Okay, that's actually could be kind of immature, if you want to call it. But the problem I have is you're actually going beyond that.
I am not. How am I? I'm saying don't be juvenile. That's what I'm saying. I see juvenile.
Okay,
I see there's a no. You are superimposing.
Okay, so being juvenile is what you said. Like you just make silly jokes or whatever, and they just call you names. You call them names, right? That's your idea.
Didn't that happen? Didn't it happen? Did it not happen?
That doesn't mean that you can't be harsh and stern with them, and you can't be, talking to them in a way that makes them understand what they're doing is 100% wrong. You're saying let the children of Israel go is harsh and stern, and that's the extent of being harsh and stern. Like you have to be nice, you have to debate with them in the nicest manner, and that's harsh and stern. Just state the facts and leave. That's harsh and stern. No, you're absolutely wrong about that.
You're placing
I have no ambiguity in saying that. But what the point that I'm saying you're right about is that yes, certain times when you do debate with them and you do fight with them and you do resist the things, sometimes you could do it poorly in a way that it might come off as immature or whatever and less dignified. That's fine. But the problem I have is you're taking it to the different level by saying that being harsh and stern is just stating being serious, and it just means to be exact. That's wrong. I mean, you're fighting these people. They're being punished by God.
Are you their punisher? You are punishing them?
No, I said they're being. Excuse me. I said they're being punished by God.
Through you?
Scenario where God is humiliating them.
Oh, so this is a concept.
But you're saying yes, God is humiliating them by having someone debate with them who's just being serious.
Oh, okay.
All right. Comes and posts an article and then disappears for a month.
Okay. See, thank you for exposing what you think about me. I appreciate that. No, I know exactly what you're saying. I do.
No,
I see exactly what you're saying.
No.
I see exactly what you're saying. Don't worry about it. I got it. I've always gotten it. I don't care that that's what you see it as. What I'm saying to you. No. Why don't you stop placing words on my lips and use the words that actually come out and present your own facts. Don't take things out of context, what I'm saying, and say that I'm implying more than what I'm. No. It's wordplay. It's wordplay, and I'm simply saying. You know what? I honestly know.
Jeff, I have to tell you what your words are coming off as.
No, you don't.
You.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
you're just taking
Maybe we should do a Fatiha. Let's do a Fatiha.
Let's
go.
Honestly,
Honestly,
you can do a Fatiha, but don't shut me up right now. I'm trying to say that. First of all, you have what you're saying is just make your point and leave. That's harsh and stern. That's wrong. That's not what English word means. I mean, you could use different words if that's what it all meant. You're saying that's all it means. And I disagree with that 100%.
I know,
I
but you didn't present. You did not present a good argument there.
So I have to say it because you're saying that you just make your point and you leave. And I said that's not what it means. You just come and write a knowledgeable article about the subject, and then you disappear for a month. That's not what it's saying. But that's literally the description of, to me, in my mind, what you're saying. That's what we should do. That's harsh and stern to you. I'm sorry, that's not harsh and stern.
I see.
I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm not telling you what I think of you. I mean, I'm telling you what I think of you. I think what you're saying is wrong. That's what I think.
Right, and I understand.
Yeah,
I understand, and I think though that
I think you're a very good person.
Wait. I honestly. I love being in this group. I love being with brothers with you guys. This is not an issue of that. This is fantastic. This is not about feeling dissed or any of that kind of stuff. This is about being able to engage in concrete issues, and I love it. And so I don't feel, I've always known this presentation from your side. I know it. I'm not surprised. This is something I'm not letting go simply because I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of it. And I've said that before. And I know you're warning me and you're saying, look, Jeff, you might be harming yourself by this kind of thinking and that kind of, I understand.
It's not even a warning. You're still learning. I mean, we're all learning. So
no, but it's
fine. But I mean, cool. It is a warning, but God is warning, basically.
It's cool.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying even that's cool. However, what I'm saying is that I'm also presenting a warning as well. That's what I'm saying. I feel like there's a certain blindness from that side of the argument. Perhaps I kind of think, it seems like there's a little bit of a justification, and I think that it might have come down, and maybe this will be a good way for me to find the answer. And it's when you said that they are being punished at our hands. That basically you're doing God's work.
Please, no, don't make it so dramatic. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying
you said it.
That God's saying in the Quran He's humiliating them, and I'm saying someone just coming up to them and saying, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong," and then disappearing after that for like a month or whatever. That's not what God is talking about. I mean, it's really like downplaying it. Like when God says like set them up as a deterrent, all that, you're just like, oh yeah, just come and give them a lecture and then disappear, and that's humiliating for them. I mean, that's not what God says.
Right. No, what I'm seeing is that you're saying, look, it's our job to humiliate them.
No,
it's our job to punish them.
I said it's our job to be harsh and stern with the people who fight against the message. That's because God says that's the quality of the believers. They're kind and compassionate amongst themselves, harsh and stern with the disbelievers and the hypocrites. They're like pussycats with the believers, that the messenger said. They're like lions with the disbelievers and hypocrites. I mean, it's very simple. If you want to see the truth, if you want to see it, it's there. But the problem is, you came from this understanding that if you are somewhat unpleasant to them in any shape or form, then it somehow degrades your character. And I'm saying that might be a thing that has no Quranic basis, because find out from the Quran if that justifies it, because it's possible that could be coming from maybe your outside others areas, not coming from Quran. It's not a Quranic thing, because you're saying what God is saying. Somehow God is telling us to lower our character for the disbelievers and hypocrites in a way, But I'm saying no. If it was lowering your character, God wouldn't tell us to be harsh and stern with these people. Yes, when it comes to your personal enemy, you would be lowering your character. So you have to take the higher ground. You love your enemies. You counteract their bad response with a good response, resorting to the nicest possible response. to the one who used to be an enemy may become your best friend. You love your enemies. I mean, you do all these things with those people. That's it. Your
Well,
idea is
what
sort
I
of translating that to the disbelievers and hypocrites who are fighting the message. There's a big difference. Unless
I
they're
don't
physically
I
attacking
don't
you.
believe it's straightforward like that, because I keep telling you that it goes down to
Yeah, I
the
don't know
freedom of
why it's not
expression.
straightforward.
No, wait. No, I'm saying what you do is you argue against your version of what I'm saying, and I'm telling you that, and okay, and maybe that's my fault, but just 49:11, believers set the example. With the shaitan regime, O you who believe, no people shall ridicule other people, for they may be better than they, nor shall any women ridicule other women, for they may be better than they, nor shall you mock one another or make fun of your names. Evil indeed is the reversion to
Yeah,
wickedness
what does
after
the
attaining
subtitle
faith.
say?
Wait, no, don't yet. I haven't
Okay,
even
go ahead.
done, and
Sorry.
you're
I'm
already
saying some more
guessing it. No,
questions. Go ahead.
what? Have I even made my point yet? I
Go
don't
ahead.
understand.
Go ahead.
I know I would like to make the point, but I seem to be fighting more than just. See what I'm saying?
Okay,
Here is
the verse that you mentioned was 49:11, by the way. Okay.
yeah.
But I'm saying
Wait.
you're
I
taking out of
didn't
context.
even. Okay. You know.
Because if you see, it's talking about the believers the whole way through.
Yeah.
It says 49. You read 49:11. Read what 49:10 says. The real family, the believers are members of one family. You shall keep the peace within your family and reverence God that you may attain mercy. O you who believe, no people shall ridicule other people, for they may be better than they, nor shall any woman ridicule other women, nor shall you mock one another or make fun of your names. This whole thing is about believers, being kind to them, being righteous to them, and not having suspicion, not spying on one another, not backbiting one another, but when it comes to war, there's people fighting. This doesn't even apply. It's not even about, like, why would, it's like a whole different ball game in a way.
You know what? That's
not
a
even relevant.
huge slippery
But you're
slope
using
there.
these verses to say.
No, wait. Wait. I get
I let you speak, so I don't know why you don't let me speak. So
because to move from one. First of all, I didn't get to bring up why I brought up that verse, and now you're getting to take it all out of context in a way that I can't even believe. First of all, the way you described that in my ear sounded like the Jews saying it's okay if you can lie to, or you can cheat. No, I'm telling you the way it sounded. It sounded to me with my distorted ears. It sounded to me that you were saying that the believers get to cheat the people.
No, that's not what I said.
No, it sounded that way. So, you who believe, it means set the bar high. That's what it means. Yeah. You who believe, you are setting the example that even people are doing these.
I did agree with that, didn't I? I said, no, you shouldn't be juvenile. That's what I said. But I'm saying you can't use these verses to say we have to be nice to them.
Look, you are saying that I'm advocating being nice, and I'm not advocating being nice. I'm saying disregard
being nice.
I'm saying that, okay, for example, if you hate, like, for example, somebody who you'll argue, like your brother or your mother or your father, somebody who you love, you'll get into the deepest fights with. Why? It's not because that you have no consideration for them. It's because you love them. And so there's a hatred and there's this anger and this juice that comes out simply because they're closer to love to you than they are to disregard. And what I'm saying to you, that there is a level of hatred in disregard, that disregard might even be more hateful or pointed than somebody who is acknowledging them and giving them platform and arguing them face to face. What I'm saying, I don't know. I think that we could go on and on and on and on and on. You can have the last word. I'm worried I'm not going to make my prayer. I've been arguing this whole Maghrib, and I have to make my prayer.
Could this be maybe this is not a religious issue, but a personal issue?
Oh, sure. I mean, I've said that before, that that perhaps, and I've even said, sure, let's call it that it's my personal issue. And I've even said, okay, call me a wimp, say that I
No,
don't
no,
like
no,
the
no, no, no,
confrontation.
no, no, no,
Well,
no, no.
no, I know. I mean,
But
I'm saying I don't. What I'm saying is I don't want to avoid the topic. What I'm saying is I'm willing to say that it's a personal issue, but I still think it's an issue. Okay,
well, the thing is, I
Islamically.
used to be like that as well. Like, I was very super apathetic, or me. I'm talking about me. I was super apathetic, non-violent, apologetic. How do you say?
What's that?
Apologetic.
Apologetic.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And then when I discovered, and that's when I was atheist. And then when I discovered the Quran, and it went against everything I believed in, but I had to accept it, but it took time to learn the balance.
Right. Yeah, that's highly possible. Absolutely.
So I think,
I
but
totally agree
the
with
issue
that.
is, if you don't put yourself out there, then you will not find the balance.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. I agree with that as well. That is true. That is true. Good point.
So that's my observation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because we shouldn't, I mean, if we're only going by the verses in the Quran, which to me are clear, and then we keep having the same argue, then there is something else. There's something not being, I don't know. There's something else, basically. Right? And each person is different, so. But the
Yeah.
verses are clear, so we need to be clear about the verses. And then if you personally don't see it or feel it, then it's good to separate that from the verses.
Well, here's the thing. When you say the verses are clear, I obviously God has made things clear for us. I read one today where God says that he's going to pile up people in a pile and throw them in hell. But we know, because of so many other verses, that that is not God's nature. So therefore, in looking at the context, both sides, I think that's an example of how, well, if I look at this verse, it does say God throws them in hell, but we've been told the other meaning. And that's all I'm looking at it in terms of that, in saying that, okay, if you come at it, with a spirit of self-defense, and that you know, like there's a verse in the Quran where God describes the disbelievers, they have a chip on their shoulder. And so if you come at like you have a chip on your shoulder all the time, you're going to be, you know, defending and, you know, spouting back stuff. And I don't know if that is, I'm just saying that might not be a good character. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to wade through this.
Even if God, God does say he will pile them up and throw them in hell. And even if God does that, so what? They're already in hell. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't make God cruel. He's just piling them up and throwing them in hell. And then if someone wants to call God a meanie or a bully, that's on them. That's not God's problem.
Right. I was just actually kind of juxtaposing that with the presentation that people go to hell because they can't withstand God's presence. That one. Hey, Ahmed, I have only 10 minutes to get my my Maghrib in. Could I let me walk?
Go.
Okay. Thank you, brother.
Good luck. Hello? Anybody home?
Okay, sorry, I have to drop off for my meeting. I totally forgot about it, so I have to
Oh, shoot.
drop off. I'm good now.
Okay.
Debating some guy who believes in 3 salats.
Oh,
And I'm going behind the limit.
yeah. Tell him you have 3 toes. I mean, three fingers. Oh.
No, I'm literally insulting the guy.
Oh.
So yeah,
Mm.
being very bad. Because he's lying to his
Wow.
teeth.
Yeah, I mean, there are verses in Appendix 15 that references all those 5 prayers. So
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what they don't care.
yeah. I'm just messing with him.
Mhm.
I don't expect anything from him.
Yeah. Mm. Hey Jeff, are we
Yeah.
on the broadcast?
Yeah, we're still broadcasting. Yeah.
Okay, I'm wondering if nobody has any comments about the study, and we can just turn off the broadcast and.
Sure.
Let's see.
Okay. Well, thank you, Well, I guess you can continue, Jeff.
Oh yeah, it's God. May God guide us to the right answers, to the right understandings on all this stuff. And inshallah, that's the wonderful thing about this Quran study, is that we get to hash these things out, and God willing, we will kill our egos and be guided to the correct understandings. I don't know what else to say. And God willing, we'll get together for the next Quran study on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you.
Are you stopping or am I stopping it?
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I'm only on my phone. I didn't
Okay,
even log. Okay.